What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Straight from the Pastor's Desk podcast. Once again, I got the man of the hour, Pastor Jay, Pastor Jordan Bartlett. How you feeling today?
And we feeling good, man. No complaints.
You feeling all right? No complaints?
Yeah,
Listen,
man.
it's been a couple of weeks since we did a podcast. We had a lot of things going on at the church the last couple of weeks, y'all. But we back, and we ready to give y'all some value today. So let's not waste no time. But one thing I do need y'all to do before we begin, I need you to make sure that you're subscribed. If you're listening to this on Spotify, make sure you're subscribed. After the podcast, you need to leave us a review. These things help us get the message out, right? So if this blesses you in any kind of way, I need you to share it. I need you to make sure you're subscribed, and I need you to share it. So we're not going to waste no time, y'all. We're going to go into our first segment of the podcast, the Faith Works segment, right? And if you don't see this, if you're not watching on YouTube or Facebook right now, you should check in just so you can see what we rocking right now. We got the Faith Works apparel on right now. But so today's sermon was, we say this every single time we do a podcast, but this sermon was necessary, right? We've been in this series called Finding the Cure, right? We've been in this series called Finding the Cure, and each week we've kind of had the cure for this, the cure for what was last week? I can't remember exactly.
Last week was the cure for church.
The cure for church, right? And then the week before that we had the cure for.
They all starting to run together now.
I know. I'm challenging his memory right now.
We've been in it about eight weeks now, almost. So this is probably
all right, let's
the
go
longest
here.
series I've had.
What has been the premise? If let's say this is the first time they're tuning in, what has been the premise of Finding the Cure? Like, where was your mind at when God brought you to Finding the Cure, this series?
I was actually. God literally dropped this on me at about 5 o'clock in the morning. I had just pulled up to the gym.
Yes, sir.
And
putting that work in.
Yeah, for sure. I was really just in sort of a meditation / prayer type situation.
Yeah.
With everything that was going on with this whole coronavirus thing, man. And it was just like, it was kind of really settling in for me personally that like all these projections, man, like we don't know how long this thing gonna last. Like we don't know how long,
not at all.
We gonna be on, gathering restriction. We don't know any of that. And it dawned on me that like realistically, like they're coming up with a vaccine, but like from a medical perspective, like there's no cure.
Right. That's going to have a trial itself,
right.
really.
Right. But even then, like, I mean, if you think about it, like with the flu, like people get flu vaccinations every single year, but nobody's ever found a cure for the flu.
Right. That's true.
What I'm saying? So like the best thing you can do is really treat the symptoms.
Right.
And so as that sort of like came to a reality for me, I thought of two things. One, there was encouragement in the fact that, of course, Jesus is the cure for everything. Right. But then as we talk about, like other viruses where you have to kind of treat the symptoms, it's like, what can I say? And I asked God to just begin to tell me what to say to the people to be able to deal with not just coronavirus, but the different aspects of life that it has such an impact on.
Absolutely.
Right. So it's had an impact on our church life. It's had an impact on our mental health. It's had an impact on how we interact socially. It's had an impact on like all of these different things.
Right.
And so I just wanted for God to kind of just point me in the direction of like, okay, so even if this isn't going anywhere and some of the changes in our everyday life might be pretty permanent, like how do we treat the symptoms?
Okay. So this week, right, I'll be on that segue the whole podcast. I'm on that segue, right? So this week was the cure for depletion, right? We talked about this before we started the episode, but you can kind of interchange the word lack, depletion, all those different things. I wanted to ask you as we segue into the topic of the day, what causes lack in our life, and is lack necessary in the different phases of our lives?
Yeah, I think that if you go back and listen to the message, what you'll find is that the opposite of the cure is the cause.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, so just for example, the first step to the cure was inviting the master. So inviting Jesus into your situation. So like the opposite of that is like I could be in lack because I'm not involving Jesus in my decision making. I'm not, praying before I make moves. I'm not, you know what I'm saying? So I think that if you go back and listen to the message, what you'll find is that the cause is actually whatever the opposite is for the cure.
Okay. So let me go here then. How can we identify some of the areas that we're lacking in? Like, okay, because let's say I'm a seasoned Christian. I'm not necessarily lacking in time with God. I got the doctrine down. I almost got this thing down to a science on, hey, when I wake up, I'm praying, I'm talking to God, I'm doing all these different things. Certain, these areas that are in my life are pretty decent. How can I identify an area of lack? Because let me ask you this: is there ever a time where we're fully full in all areas?
Okay, let me.
That was a lot.
Yeah. Let me work backwards. So to answer the first question is, how do I know when I'm in lack? Generally, or how do I know that so like you said, there's interchangeable words. So the title was The Cure for Depletion. You can substitute that for lack, debt, detriment, whatever. But generally, unfortunately, a lot of times we don't know until we see the results of being in lack.
Okay.
So, for example, most people don't intentionally overdraft their bank account.
Right.
Right.
Some stuff
they spend too much.
Yeah.
And they realize that they've overdrafted the bank account when they get the notice of negative.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, if we translate that to how that applies to our lives, a lot of times we may not recognize it until we get ready to pull from a space and there's nothing there.
Okay.
So to then answer your question, is there ever a place where you're really full? I mean, you could be there temporarily, but if you get to a place where you're never needing to improve any area of your life, then that means there's no progression.
Okay.
If there's no progression, then there's no purpose. And if there's no purpose, then what's the point of you being here?
Okay. So I think that's important to state that we're never going to be perfect. And honestly, man, one thing that I realized is that anytime, like, let's say I'm focused right now on spending time with God, right? And that's 100% of my focus. There is going to be some area that's going to start lacking in some kind of way because you can't 100% focus on everything.
Right.
To your point, I wanted to kind of add this because you know how you use the analogy of the bank account, right? And like it kind of catches you by surprise because you either overpaying for something. But I think one thing is that gets a lot of people is your subscriptions. Those little bitty things that you're subscribed to that you don't even remember that date where it's coming out.
You're getting doses of it all the time.
Right.
Or it's getting doses of you all the time.
Or like you do that free trial. You know how you do the free trial? And the next thing you know, that 50, that 100 come out, that hundo. So I think sometimes we got to, because this is what me and Jay do after every couple of months or so, we go back and look at the things that we're subscribed to. So like in our lives, how can we double check like some of the things that we have subscribed to? Maybe we're what are some areas? Let's say maybe we're pouring our whole self into, let's say, our job, right? Okay, that bucket is full. Now we're pouring as much as we can into the church. These are the things that we're subscribed to, right? How can we have that evaluation set up to where, or that assessment set up to where we can make sure that we're keeping those things and we're managing those things, because like I said, you can be subscribed to so many different things, and that's what's causing the lack in your life. Maybe you're pouring yourself out and spreading yourself too thin is what I'm trying to get at.
I think that's very possible and probably happens more often than not. I think one of the mistakes that we make in that space, though, is the misconception that every aspect of our lives has to be full at the same time.
Okay.
That's an unrealistic expectation. T.D. Jakes said it this way. He said, every day you're going to fail at something. The key is not to fail at the same thing every day.
True.
So kind of use the same type of example. He was talking as a man and as a father.
Right.
He was like, if you want me to be a provider, I have to go to work.
Yeah.
But if you want an emotional relationship and connection, I can't do that while at work. So that means I have to be home, which means I'm not being a provider in that moment.
Right.
So I think that one of the mistakes we make is trying to create a balance that will never exist.
True.
There's really no such thing as balance. It's a matter of prioritizing for the season that you're in.
Right.
So maybe using Bishop Jakes' example, maybe in this season, I have to focus on being a provider, so you're not going to get as much of my personal time, but this is only for a season, so that way, in the right season, my working all those hours will put us in position for me to be able to spend more time with my family, right? So, but if you create a balance, or if you attempt to create a balance, you'll constantly just be going through the same cycle.
Right.
And you won't really ever be able to enjoy one or the other.
Okay.
Right. So in essence, if we're talking about, the areas that we lack in, you also have to prioritize those areas and say, is it a necessity that I gain in this season? I think as it pertains to the text that we were in today, though, there was obviously a lack in an area that was necessary for that time.
Right.
And so I think that that's probably one of the bigger things that we need to look at, is when we're looking at what we have and what we don't have, we also have to consider the season that we're in. Because had they not been at a wedding party, the lack of wine is not a necessity.
Okay.
If they just at home chilling, this is not a necessity, but it's because of the season that they were in that even made it a necessity for Jesus to work the miracle.
Okay. So I like that, and I want to really dissect this, because this is a spiritual development podcast, right? We want to help people develop spiritually. If you have not listened to the sermon, you need to go back and listen to the sermon, because this is not a regurgitation of the sermon, right? This is to break it down, dissect it, and really kind of push the needle forward a little bit, right?
Sure.
So that right there, what you said was super layered, and I don't want them to miss this. And that's, if you're watching, that's why I'm over here on my phone. I got to write these things down, right? The season, and we talked about the seasons in our lives and identifying the seasons in our lives. That was like 5 episodes ago, right? So go back and listen to 5 episodes ago of the Straight from the Pastor's Desk podcast. We're not going to go over that, but can we? First of all, I want to ask you this: can we interchange the word season for a focus? Like, is a season a time that we're focused on this thing or these things?
I think the season influences our focus.
Okay. That's good.
Yeah, the season influences. I mean, so if you look at it in nature, in the springtime, your focus is planting.
Okay.
In the fall, your focus is harvesting.
Yep, we cooking, we getting somewhere.
So I wouldn't necessarily say that they're interchangeable, but they are extremely connected.
Okay. So with that, right, you said there that in that season, there's a certain focus. Like, you can't be focused on harvesting when it's springtime. That's not harvest time, right?
Right.
So we have to be aligned with God in that area. To your point, inviting the master and being aligned with, okay, God, what season do you have me in? and what's the focus of that season. And you also said there's no balance in that, right? And I can't remember whose quote this was, but they basically said like, if you're seeking balance in your life, really you're not dedicated to the one thing that you need to be dedicated to during that season, to your point, right? You're not dedicated, you're not committed to whatever that thing is, because like you said, you can't be all things, right? You can't be this and this and that. So that's going to cause some type of, I don't want to use the word chaos, but it's like the only word.
Dysfunction.
It's going to cause some dysfunction. And I want people to understand that that's okay. During that season, like that's okay, because God is giving you a focus for that season. Like you said, I can't be the emotional person from work. I got to be committed to the thing that's in front of me, which is providing. Now, when I get home, you know what I'm saying? I can change that. So there's going to be some dysfunction, which is going to basically cause some leaks in our lives, right? When those leaks are happening, how do we stay focused so that doesn't become the distraction? You see what I'm saying? Because if God has us focused in this area, which is going to cause a little bit of, let's say, lack in another area, but we're focused here because this area was lacking and this is why we're focused. How do we not get to the point where we're like, all right, I got this to 70%. Now let me run over here and do this. Let me do this. And the reason why I'm asking you is because as our pastor, I know that you're got so much stuff on your plate, from working to the house to this. But one thing that I constantly see you do, because I'm behind the scenes, is even though all these things, I can see how you prioritize and say, but these things are first. I don't care about that. Let's get this thing working. You know what I'm saying? So what is your formula or method for that?
I just think that it's what you said. You really have to prioritize your life. And I think sometimes we mess up because we allow influence to prioritize our lives. Okay. So we allow our family, friends, social media, whatever, to determine what's the order of importance in our lives. And I know from experience that doesn't work. Right. So the prioritizing is your key. With that being said, I also believe in working diligently enough in a season that you have enough to last you until you get back to that season.
So now you're talking about like overflow.
I'm talking about, in the prioritizing, I'm talking about not wasting what you have.
Okay.
And so for example, sometimes money is just the easiest example to use.
Yeah.
It
Everybody can relate to that. Yeah.
So if I'm gonna work the overtime so that I can have vacation time, so I'm gonna work all of these days. I'm gonna work all of these days, so that when I go on vacation, I'm not penny pinching on vacation.
Right.
Well, that works in theory, except for during the time frame where you work in the overtime. Instead of bringing your lunch to work, you going out to eat every day. So you're dipping into the fun, the whole purpose of you working the overtime. So you're not necessarily being a good steward over, what you have. And so I believe that whatever your focus is in a moment or in a season, you need to maximize that as much as possible, because you're going to need some to get you by until the next one. But again, kind of reverting back to the text, is that I don't know what caused them to be in lack. I don't know if the wine that was put out first was so good that people just went ham and it was unexpected. I don't know if whoever the coordinator was didn't do their job effectively. I don't know if more people showed up than RSVP'd. I don't know that. But what I do know is that there was wine,
right,
and then there wasn't.
Yeah.
So there was some level of preparation.
Okay.
I also know that they found it important to make sure Jesus and believers in Jesus were at this party. So I can sort of take spiritually educated guests to say that their mind frame is what I teach to our volunteer team all the time. Something's gonna happen.
Mhm.
Something's gonna catch us off guard. Something's gonna happen. Every week we're gonna have an issue.
If something can go wrong, it will go wrong, and at
But-
the worst possible time.
But what is our preparation to handle that? In the text, their preparation was to make sure that Jesus was there.
Right. Mm. Mm. Okay. So what I'm hearing from that is, and this is the first point of today's sermon was invite the master. So basically what I'm hearing, like in our lives, when it comes to not lacking, or like we said, there's going to be some areas, but whatever season we're in, so we're not in lack in that season, is to continuously have God walking with us, not stepping ahead, you know what I'm saying? Not sidestepping, not worried about this over there, whatever God is telling you to do. And that will require you to first be in communication with God. And that's something that we say every single podcast. And it needs to be reiterated every podcast.
Let me say this, and then we can go ahead and move on to the next point. But
Yes,
I think that, and I didn't say this in the message, but I think that it is equally important. So we talked about inviting Christ, but it's not enough to invite him. He has to feel welcome enough to come.
So it has to be space.
So if I invite you somewhere, but before the invitation, I've not been welcoming to you, you're not gonna want to go. Just
right.
Me sending you an invitation was not enough for you to want to go.
Right. Yeah.
Or get this: if I send you an invitation and you don't even know me,
yeah,
what I'm gonna go to this for? I don't know them.
Yeah.
Right. So not only does he need to be invited, but he needs to feel welcomed enough to want to show up.
Right. Okay. And that, like I said, this is like a running theme in the podcast, but that would require you to, like you said it today, like emptying yourself so that way God can always fill that space, and not doing it just when it's convenient. Like, oh, my bank account is low now, I'm in lack. God, you ain't talked to him in weeks. Now, God is still that good that God will still step in that space, right? But that can cause a cycle of lack when we're reactive every time. All right, God, I need you here. All right, God, my relationship is down. Let me get you here. So not only invite the master, but make sure that the master has a RSVP at all times, right? At all times. Okay, so this sermon, as we're talking about this, it's reminding me of ant theory, right? Have you ever heard of the ant theory? Like, so the ants are always working, right? They work diligently around the clock. They're never just chilling. They're never just relaxing. They're not doing that. And they're always in anticipation of the next season. So like during the summer, they're working just to store stuff up for the winter. During the winter, they're relaxing. They're not relaxing, but they're working within and getting ready for the next season, right? And what I interpret from that is that they're expecting a miracle, right? Y'all like the way I segued that. That was hard, right? So they're expecting a miracle, which was your second point. Okay, so when it comes to expectation, right, of a miracle, would you say, is that like our own expectation, or should God's expectation be the on the forefront? And what I mean by that is, my miracle may be like, yo, I need $1 million, like, or I need $10,000 to hit me at this point. That may not be what God has for me. You get what I'm saying? Or
I'll say it like this.
Okay.
God is a miracle worker, not a genie.
There we go. Okay, so God is a miracle worker, not a genie. So we're not rubbing the magic, whatever, right? We're not into that. So when we're expecting a miracle, does that mean that we have to be like, it has to be a certain thing? You see what I'm saying?
I think that we should always have the expectation that God will be God.
That God will be God.
Because I think that sometimes, and we talked about this in the message, I think that sometimes in our expectation, we can start to step into a lane that really is not for us.
That's what I was trying to.
So we can step into a lane, and again, you have to go back and listen, but we're expecting for God to be God, but we shouldn't be expecting for God to be God in the way we want him to.
Yeah.
So if you need a provision, God is a provider, but like you just said, it doesn't mean that he's just gonna drop $1 million in your lap.
Right.
If you're sick, so basically we have to be able to recognize what miracles really are, because if you're sick and the doctors are like, man, we can't figure out what's wrong with you, you only got 2 months to live, and that was 2 years ago. Yeah. You may not have been healed, but you only had 2 months. You 2 years in, and the doctor still can't figure out how you're still alive. That's a miracle.
Right. Absolutely.
Right. So we needed God to be God in that moment, because there was a diagnosis, and maybe what God did was he said, you know what, instead of being a healer, because that's what was anticipated, I'm going to be a sustainer, and I'm going to sustain you even in this moment. You know what I mean? And so I think that realistically, we should have the expectation that God will be God, and that he will always stand true to his word. And then after we get to that, then we relinquish it to him, and he determines how that happens.
Okay. So what I'm hearing in that was God will be God is that we need to kind of to your point when you were saying making spaces, always have it in mind that God's will needs to be done. Right? Because, okay, let's really dissect this, because you may have a lot of people may have lost their jobs during these times. We already know the numbers for that type of stuff, which may cause you to let's say you have a house situation where you don't know how you're going to be able to afford to stay where you're at, right? Let's just dissect this. You may say, God, I'm expecting a miracle for you to work this situation out so I can stay in this place, right? Like that's your expectation. And when that's your only expectation and you're not necessarily concerned with his will, when he doesn't do that in that way, right? When he, like, let's say you lose your house, now you like, God, what, like, you see what I'm saying? Now you're like, God, like, are you not real? Or is this like, and now you're depressed, now you're down. When really you should say, God, your will be done, because you don't know what's on the other end of that. You know what I'm saying? You don't know if that situation, which seems like lack, can turn into something greater. Maybe he got a greater house for you. Maybe he got this for you on the back end. Maybe, you were in a bad loan. You know what I'm saying? It's like, so I just wanted to kind of dissect that, because I don't want it to get misconstrued. I'm trying to say it right? That just because we're expecting a miracle, to your point, that it's always going to be in the way that we want it to be, right? It's got to be in God's way. But we should always be in expectation that God is going to be God in that situation.
For sure.
Okay, so obey the message. That was your closing point, right? And as we close this podcast, I feel like this is like the marching order for the week, right? And not just for the week, but for moving forward, right? Obey the message. I'm going to let you go ahead and break that part down.
So it basically is more of what we were just talking about. And it's, like we said, if you're going to invite Christ in and have an expectation of him, don't mess those two things up with a lack of obedience.
Yes, sir.
So if he's going to be there and you're expecting something from him, don't be so full of yourself that you don't do what he's telling you to do.
Right.
And as I said earlier, your miracle is oftentimes on the other side of your obedience.
Yeah.
So we'll fall victim to, just sitting down and waiting to see what God does. But most of the time, God, in working the miracle, gives us an instruction. And as we follow that instruction, we see the miracle being worked.
Yeah.
So yeah, and realistically, sometimes we overcomplicate things. I think I've said this before. We overcomplicate things because in our minds the miracle that we need is so big that there's no way these simple instructions could match what I'm trying to get.
Yeah.
So that's why I used the example earlier about the man at the pool of Bethesda. He'd been there for 38 years, and Jesus asked him, does he want to be made whole? And in his healing, his instructions were, take up your bed and walk. Well, I've been paralyzed for 38 years. I've been trying to get in this pool, been trying to get healed.
Right.
And you mean to tell me that
I
the
didn't
only
try
thing
that.
I have to do is get up? You know what I'm
Right,
saying? And so
right.
he could have, a lot of us would have been like, well, are you going to touch me first? Are you going to, anoint me with oil first? Or do I need to go to therapy and rehab? You know what I'm saying? Like, and so sometimes, it's not even a matter of the act itself. It's a matter of being obedient to what God is calling you to or calling you to do. And then seeing that in turn, your miracles on the other side of that.
Yeah. And I think that we got to be very careful in that time to not say or not to have that mindset of, I tried this before. Right. Because to your point, like all those years, I'm pretty sure he's tried to get up before, and because when God gives us those messages, it's at that time that it becomes a real thing, right? So you might have tried that before, like let's say it's a situation in a relationship, right? And it's like, I didn't talk to them about this all the time, and God, you pray about it. A month later, God says, hey, talk to them about this. And you're like, God, I did that a month ago. Well, I'm telling you to do it now when I've already worked on their heart, already worked on their mind, already made room. Now go talk to them, because when you tried before, they weren't ready to receive it.
Well, and that kind of also goes into what we kind of wrapped up with as well, with in the text, the best wine came out last. And we were saying how the first wine wasn't as good because Christ wasn't involved.
Yeah.
So they did what they were supposed to do, and they got a decent result.
Yeah.
But anytime you add God to the mix, it's going to always enhance it. So maybe you tried it before, but you tried it under your own understanding. And the Bible says, lean not in your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he'll direct your path. Right. So because he hadn't given the direction yet, what you did before really didn't even matter.
Right.
Because you weren't being obedient to what he had for you.
Okay. So I want to ask you this one last thing, right? Just one last thing. What is your method for remembering the directions and the message? And the reason why I'm asking you this is because of this. Remember before we had like everything accessible on our phone, as far as directions and all that stuff. I would say, hey, Jordan, you go up the street, take a left, take a right, take two lefts, then two more rights, and then go around the roundabout, and then take another right. And you'd be like, by the time you get up there, you'd be like, yo, I don't even remember the directions. You know what I'm saying? What is your method for remembering? Because the way we talk about it, or even like in the Bible, it seems as if these things are happening one after another, but it can be 10 years in between God giving you a word and you fulfilling it.
Again, it's not complicated. It's very simple. One is write it down, and this is not in any particular order, but write it down, repeat it.
Yeah. Write
it, repeat it. And sometimes, unfortunately, you take some wrong turns.
Yeah. I think that's important to say.
Yeah, I can't remember if I was supposed to go right or left. Well, I went left and it ain't there, so it must have been right. So, let me turn back around versus keep going down the wrong path.
Right.
So, yeah, those are the three things I was saying, I guess, as a bonus instruction, I guess. Do it right away. Because the longer you wait, the harder it's going to be to remember the instruction. But if you just go ahead, if you start wasting time trying to negotiate with God and just be obedient and just get it done, then you won't have to worry about remembering it, because he's ordering your steps in real time. So if you just take the next step, he'll guide you from there.
Okay. And take these words of Pastor Jay. I think you said something similar to this before. Don't mistake simplicity for significance, right?
Yeah.
You said something similar to that effect, and we're going to put that in a book or something like that. Was hard, right? We're going to put that on a quote, put that up on Facebook, but don't mistake those two, right? Because I remember maybe a year ago, or not even, I don't even think it's been a year ago, but like on this journey, this path that I've been on, right? We had a lot of ups and downs, and we talked about this on the podcast before. Go back and listen to it. But one simple instruction that I didn't even look at as an instruction, I had prayed and asked God, like, what Bible book or book in the Bible I should read, right? And I think it was like on one of the first pages I had opened to, it said, stay on the path. And that was like Deuteronomy something. He had gave instructions that said, stay on the path. I can't remember exactly everything, but I was like, that's just too, you know what I mean? I'm like, God, I need you to come step in right now because I'm about to go nuts. It's a lot going on. It says, stay on the path.
Yep.
Just stay on the path. So it's that simple, y'all. So don't mistake simplicity for significance.
For a lack of significance.
For a lack of significance. And listen, I don't want you to mistake the fact that we wearing these faith worship gear up here for you not going on the website and buying one. Listen, I want y'all to understand this, and we're going to be serious right now, that this ministry is doing a lot of work, right? Like not just within the church, not just what we're doing, what you see on Wednesdays and Sundays. Like we're blessing people, right? We're blessing families. We're doing the work of God, and we can't do that without you, right? We can't do that without your help. So we have FaithWorks apparel. If you're listening to this on Spotify, it'll be in the description. If you're watching this on Facebook, on YouTube, it will also be in the description. And if you're on Facebook, if you have not liked our church page, like the page, and at the top of the page, you will see the website is pinned to the top. So I need you to go to the website. I need you to place your order, right? Pretty soon, the price of these shirts and these hoodies about to go up. Get them while they are on sale, right? And you're helping feed a family. Listen, y'all, we love y'all. We appreciate y'all. Do we got anything else to give to them?
The gathering September 6th, 4 p.m. Meet us in the backyard. We're going to have us a good time.
Yes, sir. The gathering right here at 1500 North Tiers Avenue. You do not need to RSVP, but we'd like you to so we can section you off. Okay? So be here. You said 4 p.m.?
4 p.m.
Be here 4 p.m. That's 2 weeks from now. I want to see your face in the place, y'all. Don't forget Bible study Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Church service Sunday, 10 a.m. We do, we're on YouTube, right? YouTube, Abundant Faith Christian Church. We're on Facebook. We're on Spotify, right? All three of those platforms you can catch us on. So to end this, man, we'll see you next week. We appreciate y'all for watching, for listening, and just continue to rock with us. We going places.
God bless.
Peace.